My name is Tori Myers, and I'm 24 years old. 6 months ago, on the biggest day of my life, I sat in a graduation hall with 2,000 people and an empty chair where my parents were supposed to be. When I called my mom, she picked up laughing. I could hear glasses clinking in the background, some pop song playing, silverware on plates. She said, "Honey, we already have one success in the family. We didn't think you'd actually finish." My dad didn't even take the phone. Last week I sent them one photo. My mother called 47 times in a single hour. I know the exact number because I watched every call come in, sitting on the porch of a house that belongs to me. I didn't answer a single one. Before I tell you what was in that photo, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you truly connect with this story. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I'd love to know who's listening. Now let me take you back to 6 months ago, to a Saturday morning in May. The day I was supposed to walk across a stage and finally hear my name. The morning light through my studio apartment window was thin and gray. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror in my cap and gown, trying to zip the back by myself. The zipper kept catching on the cheap fabric. I finally used a wire hanger, hooking it through the pull tab, reaching behind my neck until it caught and slid up. I checked my phone. 3 messages to my mother over the past week, all about today. The first one, sent Monday, said, "Ceremony is Saturday at 10 a.m. I have 4 seats reserved." She'd replied, "We'll see." Wednesday, "Just confirming, you and Dad and Brandon are coming, right?" A thumbs up emoji, nothing else. Friday night, "Tomorrow's the day. I'm so excited. Love you guys. Read at 9:47 p.m. No response. I took a selfie in my cap and gown, sent it to the family group chat. Brandon reacted with a fire emoji. My parents? Nothing. Not a heart, not a word. I grabbed my keys and drove 20 minutes to campus. The parking lot was already filling up. I saw families unloading, mothers clutching bouquets, fathers adjusting ties, little siblings carrying handmade signs. One girl walked past me with both parents on either side, each holding an arm like she might float away. I sat in my car for a minute, checked the group chat one more time. Still nothing new. I told myself this was different. A graduation isn't a dinner you can reschedule. A graduation is proof. 4 years of double shifts at the campus library, 4 years of ramen and spreadsheets, and 3 a.m. study sessions. If anything was going to make them see me, it was this. I had 4 reserved seats in the family section. By the end of that day, 3 of them would still be empty. Inside the hall, the noise was enormous. 2,000 graduates, twice that many in the stands. Somewhere a baby cried, and a man whistled so loud it echoed off the rafters. I found my row, sat down, smoothed my gown over my knees. The family section was up and to the left, a roped-off area with printed name cards on each seat. I could see the 4 chairs labeled Myers from where I sat, all 4 empty. I texted my mom. "Ceremony starts in 20 minutes. Are you close?" 2 blue check marks. No reply. I texted Brandon. "Hey, are Mom and Dad on their way?" 3 dots appeared. Then, "I don't know, I'm at work." His AutoZone closed early on Saturdays. I knew that. He knew I knew that. At 9:55, a woman appeared at the Myers seats. Not my mother. Professor Dolores Whitfield, 61 years old, silver hair pinned back, wearing a blazer she only wore to formal events. She set a small bouquet of yellow tulips on the chair beside her and sat down. She caught my eye across the hall and gave me a single nod. I found out later she'd called my mother the day before to confirm attendance. My mother had said she had a family thing. Professor Whitfield didn't ask what she meant by that. She just bought tulips and drove 45 minutes to the ceremony. When they called my name, Tori Ann Myers, Bachelor of Science in Accounting, magna cum laude. I walked across the stage. The applause was polite, general. No scream from the stands, no air horn, no sign with my face on it. Just Professor Whitfield's voice, clear as a bell from the family section. "That's my student." I held my diploma cover and kept walking. The parking lot afterward was chaos. Families everywhere, hugging, crying, posing for photos in front of the big university banner. A dad lifted his daughter onto his shoulders. A grandmother held a cake with the graduate's face printed in frosting. I sat on a bench near the east exit and called my mother. She picked up on the second ring. The background was loud, laughter, the clatter of a restaurant, a Bon Jovi song on the speakers. "Oh, hi, honey. We're at Carrabba's. Brandon got promoted. Isn't that amazing? Assistant manager." I closed my eyes. "Mom, my graduation was today." Silence. 3 full seconds. Then, "Honey, we already have one success in the family. We didn't think you'd actually finish." I heard my father's voice in the background, muffled. "Tell her we'll take her to dinner next week." I opened Facebook. My mother's latest post, time-stamped 2 hours earlier, right when the ceremony started. A photo of her, my father, and Brandon at a restaurant table. Bread basket, wine glasses, Brandon grinning. The caption read, "So proud of our boy, assistant manager at 27, hard work pays off." 43 likes, heart emojis from aunts I hadn't heard from in months. I didn't say anything else. I ended the call. I sat on that bench for a long time. The parking lot emptied around me. A janitor swept confetti near the entrance. Professor Whitfield had left the tulips on my passenger seat with a note, first of many. I placed my diploma on the seat beside them, the passenger seat, where my mother would have sat on the drive to the ceremony, if she'd been there. That was the last time I called my mother for 6 months. Not because I was angry, because I finally understood that I'd been waiting for a verdict from a judge who never showed up to court. Let me go back further. You need the full picture. I graduated high school at 18 with a 3.9 GPA. I got accepted to State University with a partial scholarship, $8,000 a year toward tuition. The rest, I'd need to cover myself. I brought the acceptance letter home on a Tuesday in March, set it on the kitchen table. My mother picked it up, read it, and set it back down. "We don't have money for that, Tori." Same kitchen, same month. My father bought my brother Brandon a Chevy Silverado, crew cab, lift kit, custom bedliner. $38,000. Brandon had just started working the register at an auto parts store. He was 21 and still living at home rent-free. I stood in the driveway and watched them hand him the keys. My mother took photos. My father clapped him on the back. Brandon revved the engine and the whole block heard it. $38,000 for a truck, 0 for my tuition. I didn't argue, I didn't cry. I went upstairs, opened my laptop, and started looking for full-time work. For 2 years, 18 to 20, I worked as a cashier at Hendrick's Grocery. Morning shifts, evening shifts, holiday shifts. I saved $14,000 in a savings account my parents didn't know about. I lived at home and ate the meals my mother cooked and watched Brandon come and go in his Silverado while I took the bus. When I turned 20, I enrolled at State. I paid my own tuition, my own books, my own meal plan. My parents didn't sign a single check. My father drove past the campus every week on his way to a job site. He never stopped in, not once in 4 years. They didn't have money for my education. They had money for his truck. Those are 2 different sentences, and I spent 2 years pretending they were the same. College was 4 years of halves, half student, half employee. 25 hours a week at the campus library, shelving books and scanning IDs. Full course load every semester. My GPA never dropped below 3.7. Every holiday I went home. Every holiday played the same. Thanksgiving, junior year. My mother spent the first 40 minutes of dinner talking about Brandon's raise, 50 cents more an hour. When I mentioned I'd made the dean's list, she said, "That's nice, honey. Can you help me set the table?" I'd brought home a certificate, outstanding student in accounting, framed it myself at the dollar store. My mother stuck it on the refrigerator with a magnet, below a photo of Brandon standing next to his truck at some car show. The next morning, the certificate had fallen to the floor. Nobody picked it up. I found it face down behind the trash can. My father visited Brandon at his store every Thursday, brought him coffee, asked about inventory, leaned against the counter and talked for an hour. He never visited me at school. 45 minutes by car. I checked once on Google Maps, just to be sure it wasn't further than I thought. 45 minutes. 4 years. 0 visits. There was one phone call. Junior year, a Wednesday night. My father's name lit up my screen and my heart jumped. I answered on the first ring. Hey Tor, listen, one of my clients needs an electrician on the cheap. You know anybody up at the school? That was it. That was the call. I gave him a name from the campus maintenance board. He said thanks and hung up. 14 seconds total. I timed it because I'd been so startled to see his name that I'd glanced at the clock. I kept that detail in my head for a long time. My father called once in 4 years, and it was to ask for a phone number. The night after graduation, I sat in my apartment with every light off except the desk lamp. On my nightstand was the only family photo I owned, a barbecue from when I was 14, all 4 of us in the backyard. My mother in the center, my father behind her, Brandon to her right. I was on the edge, half my shoulder cut off by the frame. I did the math. 6 years since high school, 2 years working at Hendrix, 4 years at State. Total I'd spent on my own education, $47,000. Tuition, books, rent, groceries, gas. Money from my parents, 0. Money from relatives, 0. Scholarship, roughly $8,000 a year. The rest was mine. Every dollar earned standing behind a register or scanning library books, $47,000. And they went to Carrabba's. I looked at the family photo. 4 people. 3 who chose dinner over my degree, and 1 who spent 6 years proving herself to an audience that was already watching someone else. I had a choice. I could keep trying, call again, explain again, hope again, pour more energy into a relationship that returned nothing. Or I could take everything I had and aim it forward. I picked up the photo and laid it face down on the nightstand. I didn't throw it away, I just turned it over. Then I opened my laptop and updated my resume. I didn't delete them from my phone. I didn't block them. I just stopped dialing. And for the first time in 6 years, the energy I'd been spending on waiting for them to notice, I kept it. I held on to it like a deposit I'd finally stopped lending out. The next morning, I woke up at 6 a.m. and started applying for jobs. I sent out 11 applications before noon. 2 weeks of silence. No calls from me. No texts. The group chat sat untouched. Then my mother called. Honey, we feel terrible about the graduation thing. Let's do dinner this weekend? The whole family? I said yes. I don't know why. Habit, maybe. Or the last flicker of that old hope. The one that whispered, maybe this time they'll see it. Saturday night. I drove to my parents' house. Same beige siding, same American flag on the porch, same Silverado in the driveway. I brought a bottle of wine. My mother met me at the door, hugged me. We're so sorry we missed it, sweetheart. Truly. We sat down. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans from a can. For 10 minutes it almost felt normal. Then Brandon arrived, late, loud, dropping his keys on the counter. And just like that, the conversation shifted. Brandon, tell Tori about the apartment, my mother said. He was looking at a 1-bedroom downtown. My parents were helping with the deposit, $3,000. My mother described the layout like she'd already memorized the floor plan. I waited for a gap in the conversation. I'm applying to accounting firms in the area. There's one I'm really excited about. My father looked up from his plate. Accounting? Like taxes? My mother tilted her head. That sounds stable, I guess. Then she turned back to Brandon. So when's the move-in date? I cleared the table. 7 plates. I counted them because I needed to focus on something other than what I'd just heard. In the living room, I caught my father's voice, low, meant for Brandon only. Your sister thinks she's too good for a real job now. I washed all 7 plates, dried them, stacked them, and drove home. 2 days later, I had an interview scheduled at Greystone and Associates, a regional accounting firm, 12 employees, solid reputation. Professor Whitfield had emailed the managing partner personally. I mentioned it at the next family dinner. I shouldn't have. My mother leaned forward, forehead creased. Honey, are you sure about this? You're still so young. What if it doesn't work out and it goes on your record? She paused. Brandon was earning real money at your age. No stress, no pressure. I said the interview was just a conversation. She nodded slowly, the way she does when she's already decided you're wrong. The next afternoon, my phone rang. Aunt Margine, my father's older sister, the one who always sent birthday cards with $10 bills tucked inside. Tori, congratulations on graduating. I'm sorry I'm late. I just heard. Your mother told me at church. Thanks, Aunt Margine. That means a lot. She also mentioned you're interviewing at some little firm? She sounded worried, said she hoped you wouldn't be too disappointed. I sat on my bed, staring at the ceiling. My mother had taken the one piece of good news I'd shared and repackaged it as a cautionary tale for the extended family. That night I called her, kept my voice even. Did you tell Aunt Margine my interview was a waste of time? I was just worried. A mother worries. You twist everything I say. Aunt Margine called me back the next day. She said something I haven't forgotten. Your mother does this, Tori. She did it to your father's sister too, years ago. She has a way of reshaping other people's good news into her own concern. That was the first time someone in my family named the pattern out loud. I called Professor Whitfield that evening, told her what my mother had done. The phone call to Margine, the reframing, the worried performance. She was quiet for a long time. Then, Tori, I've watched students like you for 30 years. Bright, capable, and stuck giving progress reports to people who use them as ammunition. Stop sharing. Your success is yours. Guard it. I sat with that for a full day. Then I made a decision. From now on, my family gets nothing. Not silence, just nothing new. No updates, no milestones, no vulnerability. An information diet. I went to my interview at Greystone the following Tuesday. The office was in a converted Victorian house on Main Street. Oak floors, tall windows, a receptionist named Dana, who offered me coffee in a real mug. Margaret Greystone met me in her corner office. 63, silver reading glasses on a chain, framed CPA license from 1987. She'd built the firm from a one-room operation above a hardware store. She asked me the standard questions: experience, strengths, 5-year plan. Then she set her pen down. Why accounting? I'd rehearsed something about analytical thinking and career stability, but what came out was, because numbers don't play favorites. Margaret looked at me for 3 seconds, picked up her pen, wrote something in her notebook. I couldn't see what. We'll be in touch, Ms. Myers. I shook her hand and walked out into the sunlight on Main Street. My phone was in my pocket. For the first time in my life, something good had happened, and I didn't reach for it to call my mother. I drove home with the windows down. The air smelled like cut grass in the beginning of summer. I didn't tell anyone about the interview. I kept it mine. If you're watching this and you've ever had to hide your own success from your own family, not out of humility, but because you knew they'd find a way to use it against you, then you know exactly what that drive home felt like. And if this story is putting words to something you haven't said out loud yet, hit the like button so I know. Because the next part? That's where everything started to change. The call came on a Thursday. Dana from Greystone, the receptionist with the real coffee mugs. Ms. Myers, Margaret would like to offer you the staff accountant position, $58,000 a year, full benefits, starting in 2 weeks. I sat down on my kitchen floor. Not dramatically, my knees just did it on their own. I accept. I called Professor Whitfield first. She picked up on the first ring, like she'd been waiting. Don't thank me, she said. Thank your GPA. I'm thanking you anyway. Fine, but buy me coffee when you get your first paycheck. I called Cora next, my best friend since sophomore year. the only person who knew the full inventory of what my family had and hadn't done. She screamed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. She ordered a pizza to my apartment from across town. Pepperoni and mushroom. Celebration protocol. That night, I sat on my couch with the pizza box open and my offer letter printed out on the coffee table. I looked at my phone. My mother's name in the contacts. My thumb hovered. This was the moment I'd been rehearsing for years. The proof. The objective, measurable evidence that I was worth something. A real job, a real salary, a real title. Surely now. I put the phone down. For the first time, a good thing happened, and I chose not to hand it to someone who would shrink it. That night, I opened Facebook. My mother had posted a new photo, the whole family at a weekend barbecue. Burgers, lawn chairs, Brandon flipping something on the grill. Caption: Nothing beats family time. The photo had 16 likes and a string of heart emojis. I wasn't in it. I hadn't been invited. I unfollowed my mother's page, closed the app, finished my pizza. 2 months into Greystone, I was keeping pace. Margaret gave me more responsibility each week: client reconciliations, quarterly filings, a small business audit that the previous staff accountant had left half-finished. I stayed late without being asked. Not to impress anyone, because the work felt like mine in a way nothing else ever had. My first paycheck. I opened a new savings account and transferred $1,200. On top of the $14,000 from Hendricks and the $3,500 I'd scraped together in college, I had a cushion, not a fortune, a foundation. Cora and I grabbed lunch one Friday at the sandwich shop on Elm. She was renting a 1-bedroom across town. $900 a month, no dishwasher, a landlord who answered maintenance requests with a shrug emoji. "I'll be renting forever," she said, chewing on a pickle spear. "I've been looking at houses." She almost choked. "On our salary?" "FHA loan, 3.5% down. I've been saving since I was 18. She stared at me. "You're serious?" I was serious. I'd been running the numbers on my lunch breaks. A starter home in the area, 2 bedrooms, small yard, nothing fancy, ran between $130,000 and $150,000. With an FHA loan, I'd need around $5,000 down plus closing costs. I had it. I found the house on a Tuesday. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a front porch with a railing that needed paint. White siding, red mailbox, a small backyard with a birch tree. Listed at $139,000 on Maple Ridge Drive, in the quiet part of Milford where the streets had sidewalks and the yards had fences. I didn't realize it then, but Maple Ridge Drive was the same road my father took every morning on his way to the shop. And the same road my mother drove to work at the dental office, every single day. Before the house closed, there was the birthday party, March, my father's 55th. My mother threw it at their house, folding tables in the backyard, coolers of beer, a sheet cake from the supermarket. Aunt Margene came, Uncle Rick, a handful of cousins, neighbors from the block, maybe 20 people total. I hadn't been to the house in months, but it was my father's birthday, and some part of me, the stubborn arithmetic part that still believed in inputs and outputs, thought maybe I should show up. So I drove over with a bottle of Merlot and a card that said, "Happy birthday, Dad." My mother opened the door, looked me up and down. "Oh, you came." Not, "I'm glad you're here." Not, "We missed you." Just, "Oh." I found a seat next to Aunt Margene, who squeezed my hand under the table and didn't let go for a full minute. After the burgers, my father stood up to say a few words. He thanked everyone for coming. He talked about family, about hard work, about what mattered. "And I'm especially proud of Brandon here," he said, lifting his beer. "Building his career, becoming a leader at that store. That's what this family is about. Rolling up your sleeves and getting it done." 20 people raised their drinks. I raised mine too, on reflex. He didn't say my name. Not once. Not a mention of my graduation, my degree, my job. Nothing. Aunt Margene leaned over. Her voice was barely a whisper. "He didn't even say your name." I kept my face still, took a sip of wine, set the glass down. And then Brandon opened his mouth, and I wished, with everything I had, that he hadn't. Brandon was 3 beers in, leaning back in his chair, grinning, riding the high of our father's toast. "Yeah," he said, loud enough for the whole table. "Dad taught me everything I know." Meanwhile, Tori spent 6 years learning how to use a calculator. Laughter. Not everyone, but enough. Uncle Rick chuckled. A neighbor smirked. My father shook his head with a half grin, the way men do when they think something's funny but won't say so. My mother didn't correct him. She smiled, soft, indulgent, the kind of smile you give a toddler who says something accidentally rude. Boys will be boys. Cousin Derek, Marjean's son, 2 years younger than me, quiet, built like a defensive lineman, sat across the table and said nothing. But his jaw was tight and his eyes didn't leave my face. I set my fork down. I looked at Brandon. I kept my voice level. 6 years of calculators, and a degree, and a job. You're welcome to visit my office if you want to see what I do with them. The table went quiet. Brandon's grin stiffened. Whoa, chill, Tor. It was a joke. My mother cut in immediately. Tori, don't ruin your father's birthday. There it was, the reflex. Protect the golden child, scold the other one. Even now, even in front of 20 people, the pattern held. I nodded. You're right. Happy birthday, Dad. I turned back to my plate. Aunt Marjean's hand found mine under the table again. She squeezed once, hard. I see you, she whispered. Don't you dare shrink. I didn't shrink. I finished my dinner. I helped clear the dessert plates. And then I left, quietly, through the side gate, before anyone could ask me to stay. I drove home with both hands on the wheel, gripping harder than I needed to. Not because I was sad, because I was clear. 6 years of moments played back in order. The certificate behind the trash can, the $0 contribution to my education, the Silverado in the driveway. We'll see. The thumbs up emoji. Carrabba's. We already have one success. Learning how to use a calculator. Don't ruin your father's birthday. Every line a tile in the same mosaic, and for the first time I could see the whole picture without squinting. At a red light on Route 9, I opened the family group chat, typed with one thumb. I won't be coming to family events for a while. I need space. Send. The light turned green. I drove. My phone rang before I'd gone 2 blocks. My mother. I pulled over, answered. What is wrong with you? Her voice was tight and high. It was a joke. You are overreacting, Tori. You always do this. I waited until she finished. Then I said calmly, like I was reading a closing statement. I'm not overreacting. I'm done performing for an audience that already decided I'm the understudy. I hung up. At home, I sat on the edge of my bed, opened my phone, settings, blocked contacts, Linda Myers, add, Gary Myers, add, Brandon Myers, add. 3 names, 7 seconds. I set the phone on my nightstand and lay back. The ceiling was white and blank and perfect. No noise, no group chat pinging, no mother calling to explain why my feelings were inconvenient. 3 months later, 6 months after graduation day, I'd signed my name on 47 pages of closing documents. But I didn't know that yet. All I knew was the silence in my apartment and how much it sounded like the beginning of something. Closing day was a Wednesday in November. The law office smelled like new carpet and printer toner. I wore my best blouse, the navy one I'd bought for my Greystone interview, and signed 47 pages. 47. I didn't plan the number. The universe just has a sense of rhythm sometimes. Cora sat beside me as my witness. Every few pages she'd lean over and whisper something. Homeowner Tori, or landlord Tori, or Tori who owns a mailbox. I kept shushing her, but I was smiling so wide my face ached. The title attorney slid the last page across the desk. I signed. He reached into a drawer and placed a single key on a small cardboard tag. Congratulations, Ms. Myers. You're a homeowner. I held the key in my palm. It weighed almost nothing, but it felt like 6 years compressed into an ounce of brass. Cora drove behind me to the house. I pulled into the driveway, my driveway, and sat there for a minute. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a front porch with a railing I'd repaint in the spring. The sold sign still staked in the front yard, red letters against white. The neighbor to the right, Betty Harmon, 70 years old, silver perm, gardening gloves perpetually on, looked up from her flower bed and waved. "Welcome to the neighborhood, dear," I waved back. Cora grabbed my arm and walked me to the front door. I put the key in the lock, turned it, pushed. The house smelled like fresh paint and possibility. Cora pulled out her phone. "Stand on the porch, by the sign." I stood there with the key in my hand and the sold sign behind me. She took 3 photos. In the best one, I was laughing. I don't remember what she said. I just remember the sound was mine. I posted the photo that evening. A simple caption. "First-time homeowner. No cosigner, no help, just 6 years of calculators." I'd blocked my parents and Brandon months ago. They wouldn't see it. But Milford is a town of 12,000 people, and in a town that size, Facebook is a party line with a share button. By morning, the post had 87 likes. By afternoon, over 200. Friends from high school, co-workers at Greystone, old teachers, people I hadn't spoken to in years. Comments rolled in. "So proud of you, and you did that." And "First in the family, right? Amazing." Cousin Derek shared it to his own page. His caption, "Proud of my cousin. Some people don't need cheering sections to win." His mother, Aunt Margene, liked it within minutes. Then shared it again. Cora texted me at 9 that night. "Tori, your post has 200 shares. People from your high school are tagging friends. One of the Milford community pages reposted it." I hadn't expected that. I'd posted it for myself, or maybe for the version of me who'd stood in that parking lot in May, holding a diploma and a phone with no missed calls. But here's the thing about small towns. Walls are thin, fences are short, and news travels through church pews, grocery aisles, and group chats faster than any algorithm. I didn't know it yet, but Aunt Margene had screenshotted the photo and sent it to the extended family group chat, the one with all the aunts, uncles, and cousins. The one my mother checked every morning with her coffee. I'd blocked my parents on every platform I could think of, but I couldn't block a 12,000-person town, and I couldn't block Aunt Margene's sense of justice. Linda Myers was sitting in the break room at the dental office on a Thursday afternoon when her phone buzzed. The family group chat, the big one, with all the in-laws and cousins. Margene had sent a photo. Caption, "Look at our girl." My mother opened it. Her daughter, standing on a porch, holding a key, a sold sign on the lawn behind her, and a caption she had to read twice. 6 years of calculators. She called me. The number she'd been dialing for 24 years. It went straight to voicemail. She tried again. Voicemail. She borrowed the office phone. Voicemail. She tried from her personal cell, the office landline, and then, according to Aunt Margene, who heard about this later, she drove to the parking lot and called from her car 6 more times. Meanwhile, 10 miles away, my father was driving his work truck down Maple Ridge Drive, the same route he took every morning, past the birch trees and the neat little fences. He glanced right, habit, and saw the sold sign in front of the house next to Betty Harmon's place. Then he saw the car in the driveway, a gray Honda Civic. He knew that car. He pulled over, sat in his truck, stared. He called my mother. "Did you know about this?" Her voice came through the speaker cracked and raw. "She bought a house? On Maple Ridge?" 47 calls in 1 hour. I know because my phone logs them even when they're blocked. I pulled up the list that evening, sitting at my new kitchen table, and counted. 47. Same number as the pages I'd signed. Same number as the $1,000, times 1,000, I'd spent on the education they called unnecessary. I set my phone face down on the counter. My counter. In my kitchen. In my house. 47 calls. You know what the saddest part is? If my mother had spent even a fraction of that energy on my graduation day, just one call saying, "Honey, we're so proud of you," then that photo might have been sent to her first, not last. If this hits close to home for you, share this video with someone who needs to hear it today, because the next part is where they show up at my door. Brandon showed up the next afternoon. I wasn't expecting him. I'd forgotten he wasn't blocked because he'd never actually called. He stood on my porch in his AutoZone polo, hands in his pockets, looking at the house like he was appraising a car he couldn't afford. "Nice place," he said. "Thanks. Mom is losing her mind, Tor." "She can lose it somewhere else." He shifted his weight. "Come on, she's your mom. She just wants to talk." She had 4 years to talk. She had a phone at my graduation. She chose Carrabba's. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I didn't know it was that bad." "You didn't want to know. There's a difference." He looked at me like I'd flipped a switch he didn't know existed. The golden child standing in the scapegoat's doorway, and for the first time, the math didn't add up the way he'd been taught. "I don't hate you," I said. "I don't hate them. But I'm done being the person who makes this family feel okay about how they treat me." He nodded, slow, like he was processing something heavy. Then he turned, walked back to his truck, and opened the door. I noticed it then. On the passenger seat, a paper bag from the grocery store. Inside, a small bouquet of yellow daisies and a card. I could read the envelope from where I stood. "Congrats on your new home." He'd bought them on the way over, drove here with them sitting right there, but he hadn't pulled them out, hadn't handed them to me. He'd come to deliver our mother's message instead of his own. He drove away with the flowers still on his seat. I went inside and closed the door. I didn't lock it, but I didn't leave it open either. 3 days later, I came home from work and found my mother sitting on my front steps. Betty Harmon was across the yard, watering her azaleas with her garden hose, watching without watching. My mother stood up. Her eyes were red. She was wearing the same blouse she wore to church. She must have come straight from somewhere public, which meant she'd been thinking about this all day. "You bought a house," she said. "And you didn't even tell me." I set my bag down on the porch railing. "I got into college and you didn't come. I graduated and you went to Carrabba's. Why would I tell you about a house?" "That's not fair. We were celebrating your brother." "You always are." She changed tactics. The shift was visible. Her posture straightened, her chin lifted, her voice climbed half an octave. "So this is how you repay me? After everything I sacrificed? I carried you for 9 months and this is what I get?" I stayed still. "You sacrificed? Mom, name one thing you paid for in my education. One textbook, one meal plan, $1. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. "That's what I thought." Her lip trembled. "You're punishing me." "No, I'm just living. And for the first time, I'm not waiting for you to notice." Betty turned off her hose. The yard went quiet. A car passed on Maple Ridge. Somewhere a dog barked. My mother stood on my porch, the porch I'd paid for, on the house I'd earned, on the street she drove every day. And for the first time in my life, she had no script. No redirect. No but Brandon. No a mother worries. Just silence, and the sound of her own argument collapsing under its own weight. My mother started to cry. Not the dramatic kind, the quiet kind, the kind where someone realizes the scene isn't going the way they rehearsed. I didn't step forward. I didn't step back. I stayed exactly where I was. "Mom, I don't want to fight. I don't want revenge. I want you to understand something." She looked up. "I am done earning a seat at a table that was never set for me." She wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand. Mascara smudged across her cheekbone. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to go home, and I want you to think about why your daughter bought a house on the street you drive every single day, and you didn't even know." She stared at me. Then she turned and walked down the porch steps, slowly, like she was older than 52. She got to her car, opened the door, turned back. Your father saw the house. Monday morning. He pulled over. He sat in his truck for 10 minutes. I held her gaze. Then maybe he should think about why he sat in a truck instead of walking to the door. She got in, closed the door, sat there for a moment with her hands on the steering wheel. Then she backed out and drove down Maple Ridge toward home. Betty Harmon had stopped pretending to garden. She stood at the fence, hose coiled at her feet, watching the car disappear. You okay, sweetheart? Yeah, Betty, I'm okay. I went inside, closed the door, leaned my back against it, let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding since May. I didn't cry. I just stood there in my hallway, and let the quiet settle around me, like something I'd finally earned. In a town like Milford, you can't sneeze without someone offering you a tissue and telling 3 people about it. Within a week, the story had spread through every channel that matters in a small town. Facebook, the grocery checkout line, the church parking lot, the salon on Pine Street. Sunday morning. My mother walked into Grace Fellowship the way she always did. Pressed blouse, pearl earrings, practiced smile. She slid into her usual pew, 3rd row from the back. After the service, Dorothy Henderson, 74 years old, head of the women's ministry, a woman who collected gossip the way other people collected stamps, caught my mother near the coffee table. Linda, I saw your daughter bought a house on Maple Ridge. You must be so proud. Did you help with the down payment? My mother's smile didn't waver, but her eyes did. Oh, you know Tori. She's always been independent. Dorothy leaned in. My daughter mentioned you were at Carrabba's on her graduation day. Was that the celebration dinner afterward? The color left my mother's face. She set her coffee cup on the nearest table. Too hard, some splashed, mumbled something about needing to find my father, and walked to the parking lot. At my father's shop the same week, a regular customer named Dale dropped off a leaky faucet and said, Saw your girl on Facebook, Gary. Homeowner at 24. That's something. My father nodded once, kept his eyes on the pipe. Yeah, she's something. My mother stopped going to the Wednesday evening Bible study. She skipped the potluck. She started parking on the far side of the church lot, near the exit, so she could leave before anyone cornered her. For the first time in her life, the story people were telling about the Myers family wasn't the one she'd written. The following week, Brandon sat at our parents' kitchen table for Tuesday dinner. Same table, same pot roast, same green beans. But the room felt different. My mother barely spoke. She stared out the window at the backyard where the birthday party had been. My father chewed in silence, eyes on his plate. Brandon set his fork down. So, are we just not going to talk about it? My mother's voice was flat. Your sister made her choice. Brandon looked around the table. 3 place settings. The 4th chair, my chair, sat empty at the end, pushed in tight against the table like someone had tried to pretend it wasn't there. He thought about things he hadn't thought about in years. The certificate on the refrigerator that ended up on the floor. The family barbecue photo where Tori was on the edge. The graduation he'd shrugged off with, I don't know, I'm at work. The calculator joke that got a laugh from everyone except the one person who mattered. Mom, he said, did you actually go to her graduation? We were busy. We had your dinner. My dinner was at Carrabba's, Mom. He said it slowly, like he was hearing it for the first time himself. Her graduation was once. The kitchen went still. The refrigerator hummed. My father looked up from his plate and stared at Brandon with an expression I wish I could have seen. Something between surprise and recognition, like watching someone pick up a tool they'd never been taught to use. Nobody said anything for a long time. Brandon finished his dinner, washed his own plate, drove home to his apartment, the one my parents had helped pay for, and sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes before going inside. He called me the next day. I answered because his number was the one I'd forgotten to block. Every morning, my father drove down Maple Ridge Drive on his way to the shop. He'd been driving that road for 15 years. He could do it with his eyes closed. But now there was a house on the right side, between Betty Harmon's place and the Kowalskis, that made him slow down. The first morning after he found out, he'd pulled over and sat in his truck for 10 minutes, stared at the house, at the fresh paint on the trim, at the red mailbox, at the Honda Civic in the driveway. That meant his daughter was inside, 40 feet away, drinking coffee in a kitchen she owned. He wanted to get out, walk up the porch steps, knock. But he didn't know what he'd say. In 55 years, Gary Myers had never apologized to a woman. Not to his wife, not to his sister, not to his daughter. He'd been raised by a man who showed love by showing up to work, and Gary had done the same. Except he'd forgotten to show up for the things that didn't have a time clock. So he drove on. The next morning he slowed again. Didn't stop, but slower. The morning after that, he pulled to the curb, sat for 3 minutes. The kitchen light was on. He could see a shadow moving behind the curtain. Betty Harmon noticed. Of course she did. She started timing him, not out of nosiness, she told me later, but out of hope. I've been married 51 years, honey. I know what a man looks like when he's trying to find the words. 3 weeks. Every morning. A little longer each time. I knew. I saw the truck from my kitchen window. I recognized the engine, the same rumble I'd heard in the driveway my whole childhood. I didn't go out. I didn't close the curtain. I drank my coffee and waited for him to find his own way to the door. Aunt Margene came by on a Saturday with a foil-covered pan of lasagna and a bottle of wine that was slightly too expensive for a casual visit. She sat at my kitchen table and looked around like she was memorizing the place. You did this, she said. You actually did this. I did this. She poured 2 glasses. Your mother is a mess, Tori. The church ladies are asking questions she can't answer. Your father goes quiet every time someone says your name. Dorothy Henderson brought it up again last Sunday and your mother nearly knocked over the communion tray getting out of the pew. Good. Margene gave me a look. Not disapproval, just steadiness. I'm not saying feel sorry for them. I'm saying they're starting to understand. And that process is ugly. She told me my mother had called her 3 times that week, crying, saying I hated her, saying she didn't deserve this. Margene had listened each time and then said the same thing. She doesn't hate you, Linda. She just stopped hoping. Margene set her glass down and looked at me. That's the hardest thing for a parent to hear. Not, I hate you, but I don't expect anything from you anymore. I ran my finger around the rim of my glass. Is that wrong? To stop expecting? It's honest, and honest is all you owe them. We ate the lasagna, drank the wine. She told me about Derek's new job and Uncle Rick's bad knee and the neighbor's cat that kept digging up her tulips. Normal things, family things. The kind of conversation I'd stopped having with my own parents so long ago, I'd forgotten what it sounded like. When she left, she held me for a long time at the door. You're doing fine, kid. Better than fine. 6 months to the day after I started at Greystone, Margaret called me into her office. The room smelled like the lavender candle she kept on the windowsill. Her reading glasses sat on a stack of client folders. She gestured to the chair across from her desk. Your 6-month review, she said, sliding a printed sheet toward me. Every category exceeds expectations: client satisfaction, accuracy, initiative, teamwork. 5 for 5. I'm promoting you to senior staff accountant, effective next month. She paused. And I want you to lead the Watkins account. The Watkins account was the firm's largest client, a regional construction company with complicated books and a founder who didn't trust anyone under 40. That's usually for someone with 2 years' experience, I said. Margaret removed her glasses and set them on the desk. Usually, but you're not usual, are you? I shook her hand. My palm was sweating. I didn't care. In the hallway, Cora was waiting. She'd clearly been eavesdropping because her smile was already at full wattage. Senior staff? In 6 months? She grabbed my arm. I hate you. I love you. I hate you. That evening, I sat on my front porch with a glass of iced tea and watched the light fade over Maple Ridge. The street lamps clicked on one by one. Betty was in her garden, trimming something that didn't need trimming, the way she did when she wanted company. Your father came by again today, she called over the fence. Sat for 12 minutes. I timed him. 12 minutes. 3 weeks ago it was 3, then 5, then 8. He was getting closer. I could feel it the way you feel a season changing, not all at once, but in the weight of the air. I sipped my tea and smiled. Saturday morning, early. I was in the kitchen in sweatpants and a Greystone hoodie, pouring my second cup of coffee, when I heard a knock. Not the mailman, not Cora, not Betty. I opened the door. My father stood on the porch in his work boots and ball cap, the same ones he'd worn every day of my life. In his hands was a small cardboard box. He looked at the box, then at me. I brought this, for your back door. The lock you've got on there. It's a builder-grade piece of junk. This one's commercial. Deadbolt with a bump guard. I use them on job sites. He held the box out like an offering. I looked at it. A door lock. Not flowers. Not a speech. Not a greeting card with someone else's words inside. A deadbolt. Because that was the language he knew. I took the box. Do you want to come in for coffee? He stepped inside, took off his cap, held it in both hands. His eyes moved around the kitchen. The white cabinets, the small window over the sink, the framed degree on the wall above the breakfast nook. He stopped, stared at the frame. I watched his face do something I'd never seen it do in 24 years. His chin tightened. His throat moved. That's your degree? That's my degree, first one in the family. He nodded, kept nodding, like he couldn't stop. His eyes were wet. He didn't cry. Gary Myers doesn't cry, or at least he never has where anyone can see. But he was close, closer than I'd ever seen him. I should have been there, he said. At your graduation. I should have been there. No excuses, no redirect, just the truth, laid out plain. Yeah, I said. You should have. He drank his coffee. Then he spent 40 minutes installing the deadbolt on my back door without being asked. That was his, I love you. And for the first time, I let it be enough. That's where things stand now. My father comes by on Saturday mornings. He brings his toolbox. Last week it was a leaky faucet under the bathroom sink. The week before, he rehung the closet door that kept sticking. He doesn't say much. He doesn't need to. He fixes things. That's his language, and I'm learning to hear it. My mother hasn't come back. She sends messages through Aunt Margene. Tell Tori I miss her. I haven't blocked those messages. I read them, but I haven't responded. Not yet. The door isn't locked, but she hasn't tried the handle. Brandon calls once a week. Short conversations. He asks about work, about the house, about whether the birch tree in the backyard is dying. For the first time in 27 years, he's asking questions he actually wants the answers to. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if my mother will ever sit on this porch and say the words I spent 6 years waiting to hear. Maybe she will. Maybe she won't. But I've stopped making my peace conditional on her participation. Here's what I know. I am 24 years old. I have a degree on my wall, a promotion on my desk, and a mortgage in my name. I have a porch with a railing I repainted last weekend, white, like the siding, because I like things clean and simple. I have a neighbor named Betty, who times my father's visits and reports back like a gentle surveillance system. I have a best friend who ordered pizza the day I got hired and screamed so loud I went temporarily deaf in one ear. I have a life I built with the same hands that zipped up my own graduation gown with a wire hanger. I didn't need them to see my value. I needed to stop discounting it myself. And 47 pages, 47 calls, and 6 years of calculators later, I'm finally in the black. Thank you for staying until the very end. If you've ever sat at a ceremony, a birthday, a moment that mattered, and looked at an empty chair where someone was supposed to be, then I wrote this story for you. You deserve to be seen. If you want to hear more stories like this one, check out the next video I've linked in the description. It's about another woman whose family chose to look the other way. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button, but only if you truly want to.